Mr. President, fellow guests, I'd firstly like to thank the American Chamber for inviting me to your Thanksgiving lunch here today. I was on the phone yesterday to my American grandchildren, and they're looking forward to Thanksgiving. And when it's over, they're heading down to Los Angeles to visit Disneyland for the weekend. So I better ring them late tonight to wish them happy Thanksgiving Day. There's been very long and deep relationships between Ireland and the United States of America. I remember some years ago I was at dinner in the American residence in the Phoenix Park, and I had to say a few words. And I remarked that you can see who was closest to us internationally at the foundation of the state by looking at who got permission to build in the Phoenix Park. And the papal nunciature is up there. How times have changed. And the American residence was up there. And of course, Áras an Uachtaráin, previously known as the Viceregal Lodge, was there also. But Maureen Potter was at the same table, and she was very impressed by my oratory. She says, "Minister, you forgot to mention the fourth great building in the park, which is more typical of Ireland." She says, "You never mentioned the zoo." So I'm delighted to be here to renew friendship officially on Thanksgiving Day, and to give thanks as well. I give thanks that US investors are investing here stronger than ever. Richard Bruton tells me it's going to be a record year for inward investment, particularly from the United States. And I thank you for the record as well. The US is the single largest source of foreign direct investment. Approximately 600 companies from the United States employ over 100,000 people in Ireland. There's a strong presence right across the economy now: technology, digital media, consumer and business services, life sciences. US companies account for 93 billion of our exports, and these companies account for 1.8 billion of corporation tax for the Exchequer annually. So I give thanks for your own report, your recent report from your chamber, Built to Last, you show that US firms have invested more capital in Ireland since 1990 than they have in Brazil, Russia, India and China combined. And in the last year, we've had Twitter, Coca-Cola, Google and Merck all making huge investments. And these are international names and household names around the world. So the record is great, and long may the friendship last. It's based on the long connections between Ireland and the United States, but it's also based on, I suppose, what's generally known as the IDA package to attract foreign investment in here. And not only will it remain, but we'll try and tweak it to nuance it a little better if that's possible. We fought the good fight on the corporation tax, despite a lot of heavyweights in the ring with us. And that argument has been won now, and we're certainly not going to give ground in it going forward. Like your President, I'd also like to pay tribute to Brian Linehan. I think he had a most difficult task this time last year. The loss of sovereignty came very quickly. The IMF and the European authorities intervened very quickly, and his government was falling apart, and he was forced to bring in a budget which made a correction of 6 billion. And that was some achievement. And he had difficult times, and he shouldn't be blamed if he didn't measure everything absolutely exactly, because with the limited time available, he didn't have much time to do so. But things have improved. And I'm not saying we've turned the corner. I'm not using any of those cliches. But I'll say two things. We went into government last March. We're a little farther up the road than we thought we would be at this point. And Ireland is making progress again. But we'll need to continue to make very significant progress for the next couple of years. But I claim we have made a good, solid start. But the game is not won by any manner of means. After 3 years of economic decline, we're growing again as a country. There are different estimates of growth. I have to base a budget on fairly modest growth targets, but other private sector forecasters would give us more solid growth patterns. But we'll grow this year, and we'll grow next year, and we'll grow very strongly in 2013 and 2014. Last April, we were predicting 2.5% growth for next year. We had to pull that back to 1.6, because we must be strong in our figures. But to give you an example of what that means from where I sit and stand, is every 1% growth in the Irish economy translates into a 0.5% increase in GDP, and that generates 800 million in tax revenue. So when you take 1% out, you're looking for another 800 in tax revenue, which makes the budgetary position very difficult. So we were very fortunate to get that very significant reduction in the price of the programme, where we're now getting programme funds at the cost of the funds, because that meant a saving of about 900 million for 2012, and it's nearly all wiped out by the marking back of the growth rate. But we can manage, and we will meet our fiscal targets. We'll have a decent budget, and I hope it will be pro-growth and pro-jobs. I think when we're talking about the economic progress in Ireland, we have to talk about it in the European context. And, you know, this time last year, anybody analysing the problem would say it's a Greek problem, it's an Irish problem, it becomes a Portuguese problem. Anybody talking about it now knows that it's a problem of the Eurozone. And, you know, we're positioned differently now because we're no longer central to the problem. And there's less talk about Ireland now. And as long as we can keep our heads below the parapet and do our job and keep working hard, I think we can work our way back to prosperity. There's misunderstandings about the euro. The euro is a great currency. The euro is going to be, in my view, one of the lead world reserve currencies, and it's heading in that direction. The euro was put in place 12 years ago. It was initiated as a Franco-German project. But since then, European trade has increased by 50%, thanks to the fact that there's one currency across 17 countries. Inflation has been kept below 2% in each of the 12 years. And that's lower than the Deutschmark kept inflation in Germany in the previous 12 years. The value of the euro has actually gone up. It was around just below 120 when initiated. Even now, with all the pressure, it's in the 130s. And, you know, if we solve this problem, it'll move up. So the problem is not the euro. You'll see what the Swiss did when they were under pressure 5 or 6 weeks ago. They benchmarked the Swiss franc to the euro at 120. But they didn't bench it to the dollar or the yen or to sterling or go back to the gold standard. You know, that was a great vote of confidence in the euro by very canny people. And that's where it is. So the euro is a good currency. But there are problems in Euroland, because when the euro was put in place, the policy instruments to protect it in times of adversity were never put in place. And they're now being retrofitted. And so far, the political decision-making process has left us continuously behind the curve. But I hope that that may change in the next month or so. A lot of progress has been made. A lot of the architecture is now in place for a monetary union to protect the currency. But it wasn't in place at the start. And it was a kind of a kick-and-hope strategy. And, you know, the kind of instruments of policy that are common in the United States, you know, automatic stabilizers, fiscal transfers to the states, federal bonds, none of those were in place in Europe. But they're being systematically fitted now under pressure. And the great debate is about to reach the climax now, where you have Germany saying, look, we could do a lot of other things if there was treaty change, which allowed us to ensure that no indisciplined country could drag the project down because they didn't behave properly in their budgetary policies. That's effectively what they're looking for. Now, whether it requires treaty change or whether it doesn't is a kind of a moot point. But what they're looking for is straightforward. If they got that, they're prepared to move on other things.